Good morning, and welcome to another episode of Muck It. So, this is episode 4. As you guys know, these Muck It episodes, I'm just out here mucking anyway. And so, what I do is I turn on the camera and talk about some things that I've been thinking about in the last few days, from either a horse training standpoint or just life in general, but always something that relates back to both horse training and life. So, the thing I wanted to talk about today is something called cognitive dissonance. Now, this is a term that I learned back actually when I was at West Point years and years ago. And so everybody at West Point has to take a psychology class. And in psychology class, that's one of the things we learned about is cognitive dissonance. And what it means basically is, we all have mental models of the world. And when something that there's a horseshoe. I wonder who threw that. Um, we all have mental models of the world, but sometimes the reality or the information that we're processing doesn't line up with the model that our brain has built. So let me give you an example. Like, let's say you see a car sitting 20 feet away in a parking lot, and you only can see one side of it, right? Because that's how our eyes work. We see basically in a two-dimensional, it's like we're seeing a painting. It's kind of how our eyes work. So you see one side of the car, but your brain is going to fill in that probably the other side of the car looks very similar to the side of the car I'm looking at. If I'm looking at a red car, my brain's going to fill in that most likely the other side of the car is also red, right? If I can see two tires on this side, my brain's going to tell me probably there's two tires on the other side. Now, what if somebody came along and told you, actually, the other side of the car is white? You would have a little bit of cognitive dissonance because your brain's telling you 99% of the time or more, if you see a car and it's red on one side, it's red on the other. Why would it be red on one side and white on the other? So that's kind of an example of what cognitive dissonance is. Now, when I was a financial advisor, when I started becoming a financial advisor, like almost 10 years ago now, I was pretty averse to controversy, I guess you could say, or non-confrontational. And so when something would come up that would be cognitive dissonance in my brain, I would kind of gloss over it. So to give you an example of that, like let's say I'm sitting down with a client and the clients are in really good shape. They've been saving for retirement for 20 years and they've got a couple $100,000 in IRAs and a couple $100,000 in regular investment accounts, and their house is paid for and they have college funded for their kids, and they have their life insurance in place, and everything's basically set up correctly. They have plenty of money, but then they tell me at some point in the conversation, oh, but we do have the $5,000 in credit card debt. And you're like, wait, what? Why would you have $5,000 of credit card debt if all your other finances are in order? You've got all this money. Why would you not just pay off that debt? Now, when I first became an advisor, I would have let that slide and just think, well, these guys are doing well. They've been doing this for handling their own finances for 20 years. I just became an advisor. I'll just kind of let that slide and maybe I'll figure it out later, but I'm not going to dig into that cognitive dissonance. What I realized though is that that point, that contention point where your brain is going, wait, something doesn't quite make sense. That's where you can actually provide the most value as a coach. And so I learned to actually dig into that cognitive dissonance and ask more questions and get to the point where it makes sense. And in that situation, maybe they co-signed on a credit card with their kid, and their kid kind of messed up and ran up a bunch of debt, and they're trying to get the kid to pay it off, but they're still co-signed on it, or something like that. There's probably more to the story that makes it understandable. And then as a coach, as a financial advisor, maybe I can actually give them advice through that situation, or maybe they're already handling it correctly. But the point is, as a coach, you have to dig into those cognitive dissonance areas in order to help the person you're coaching grow. And same thing in your own life. And so I find this a lot with training horses. If there's something that your horse, that you know in the back of your mind, your horse isn't real good at yet, that's the place you need to really lean in and focus your training. You don't really need to keep doing, if you keep advancing on the things that your horse is doing well and bypass that thing your horse is not doing very well, you're going to get into trouble at some point. I'll give you an example of this. So a mistake I learned from just the other day. So I was working with Saint. You can't see him in the camera, but he's over there. He's a 3-year-old, really, really cool horse, phenomenal horse. He's a half brother to Vandy, which is my 4-year-old that Anna just competed on in Ring Cow Horse a few weekends ago. So Saint's a half brother to her. Really cool horse. He's going to be great, but he's only 3. Just got him off the ranch, like basically out of the wild. 4 or 5 months, I can't remember, a few months ago. So very unhandled still, but he's gentling up really good. The thing about him that I knew I needed to work on and I hadn't is he is a kicker. And if you startle him, or if just if you're behind him and he just doesn't like the situation, he will kick out. And that's fine. There's nothing, like, you want to train him out of that, obviously, but it doesn't mean he's a bad horse or anything. Every horse starts with something that's their go-to defense mechanism. Some that's just bolt and run away, some that's freeze up or rear up or kick, and for him it's kicking. And so I knew that, and I knew I needed to be working on that, but I hadn't yet. And it was kind of one of those cognitive dissonance things. It was like I knew I needed to work on it, but I hadn't quite processed it in my brain to actually go out and work on it. So because he's so gentle in every other way, I've been, he's fully halter broke. I've had him trailered a lot. I've had him saddled several times. And this one day I had him saddled, and we'd been doing groundwork. He'd been doing really good. And finished the groundwork. I dropped the lead rope on the ground like I'll do a lot of times. I walked away. He was licking and chewing. I mean, he was fully relaxed. And so let him stand there for a few minutes. And then I was like, I think I'll be done with the session. I'll just go unsaddle him. And I walked up to him, and I should have picked up the lead rope to be safer, but I thought I'll just leave the lead rope on the ground. He's so calm, he's so good, and in such a good mental state. So I walked up, and he was good until I went back into that area of his flank and rear end area that I knew wasn't good and knew needed work, but I hadn't actually done the work on it. And I just put my hand on the back cinch and got ready to, undo the back cinch. And when he felt that pressure kind of around his flank area, I mean, the back cinch was positioned correctly. It wasn't in his flank, but still in that back cinch area. As soon as he felt that pressure, he, did that kind of crunch thing that they'll do, getting ready, turned his butt in and kicked out, as hard as he could, and then ran away. And of course, I wasn't holding the halter. Normally, if I was holding the halter, I could turn him in towards me and not allow him to turn his butt to me and kick. But because I wasn't holding the halter, I didn't have anything else to do except duck out of the way. And as I ducked like that, his hind foot came up and basically just caught me in the gut. And it was like best case scenario as far as getting kicked, because it just felt like a really hard punch in the gut. Didn't do any damage whatsoever. But the point is, I had bypassed working on that issue, even though I knew it was an issue. I had been planning to work on it, but I was so eager to get on to saddling and doing the things that were working really well that I bypassed that issue that I knew was there and needed work and didn't work on it. So anyway, whether you're in business or, if you're working with clients or evaluating your own life or working with your horse or teaching lessons, coaching somebody, when you have that little cognitive dissonance where you're like, this doesn't quite make sense, this all works, but this doesn't quite fit into the puzzle, delve into that, really lean into that and figure out what is the reality there, and get that to where it all makes sense and fits. You're basically going to change your mental model, expand your mental model to include the thing that doesn't make sense, and build a new model where everything does make sense. And then you truly understand the situation, and you can make an accurate, work, basically recommendation, or work with your horse and make everything better. So anyway, that's my episode of MUCK It for today, episode 4. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a great day.